Simon and Hot Love. Excuse me. Our guest this morning is Sean Fielding, and he's sat opposite Mitch. Sean, first of all, thank you very much for coming in. Nice to have you at Bolton FM.
Nice to meet you, Kevin. It's great work that goes on here. Community radio is so valuable in places like Bolton in keeping people informed.
How long have you been an MP in Bolton?
So I'm only a councillor, so I've not been promoted yet, and I don't have any desire to be an MP and spend all that time in London. But I was elected in May of this year, so I'm just into my third month as a Labour councillor for Breightmet ward on Bolton.
But you have been a councillor before in a different place, if I can put it that way.
That's right. Before I moved to Bolton, I was a Labour councillor for a ward called Failsworth, which is where I grew up in the borough of Oldham. I was elected there quite young in 2012. I was only 22 at the time. And I did 9 years on Oldham Council, including 3 years as leader of the council, which is the job that Councillor Nick Peel's got in Bolton here.
You did move up quickly.
Well, I spent 6 years as a backbench councillor and did all of the community work and was on the planning committee and did all of the kind of background stuff and then was invited to have a shot at the top job in Oldham and did that from 2018 to 21.
I mean, you've had the top job, so you've clearly been successful. You clearly have something that appeals to people. Why not go all the way? It's MP.
Oh, blimey. You know, I think my girlfriend wouldn't forgive me if I went down to Westminster.
She might enjoy going to Downing Street.
Well, you know, four days a week in London and quite unsociable hours. I'm still only 33. I'll, of course, never say never, but I'm not in any rush to do it.
It's when they come knocking on the door, isn't it? That's like, so, come here, young man, we've got just the job for you.
Well, that's how I ended up standing for Oldham in the first place. So we need some young people.
Anyway, what's your first impression? You've been a Labour councillor for a few months now. What's your first impression of Bolton and Breightmet?
Well, it's been fantastic running a campaign through Breightmet and through Bolton, and it's been quite entertaining sometimes when I've knocked on people's doors and they say, "Oh, you're not from round here, are you?" Because I have this Manchester accent. But you know, it was a difficult area to canvass, but in a good way, because people were so willing to talk and would keep you on the doorstep for a long time because they wanted to tell you, you know, about what problems they were having that they perceived the council should be able to solve, but also just tell you a bit about Bolton when they realised that I wasn't originally from round here. So it was a real pleasure in a way that sometimes election campaigns aren't, because it can be quite difficult, particularly when your party might be unpopular nationally.
You've been here for a few months, and so you've had your foot on the door and talked to several people. What are the main issues in terms that you're coming across in Farnworth? So
in Breightmet is my ward. But Breightmet obviously is part of Bolton proper. You know, it's not another town in the way that Farnworth or West Horton or Horwich has its own identity. And people are very, you know, they want Bolton Town Centre to be successful and vibrant, and that was one of the biggest issues that we were picking up, particularly on the doors in Breightmet, because, of course, it's halfway between Bolton and Bury, and lots of people down there saying, I don't come into Bolton as much anymore because, you know, I go to Bury, it's just as easy to get there, and I want, you know, more shops, more things to draw me into Bolton to make it, you know, to give me a reason to go there. So I think that there's some stuff that we really have to do around improving Bolton Town Centre, making it more attractive for businesses to come here so that people have a reason to visit Bolton. And the council, I think, you know, as a newcomer to it, does some of that stuff really well. Like Iron Man at the weekend was massively successful. And the food festival, the first time I visited Bolton was the weekend of the food festival one year. And the number of people that brings into town and the amount of money is really impressive. And we need to push that so that we can
I can remember being part at the start of the food festival when there was all over 20 to 25 years ago now. And there was only 11 stalls in the first one. And now people come from all over Europe to it.
Absolutely.
It's the biggest one in the UK by far.
How it's grown.
So in terms of people at the door, what are the pressing things that you feel you've got to demonstrate? To be a councillor, you've got to demonstrate some progress in that area.
So there's some stuff that we should be able to fix relatively quickly, but there's other things that will take much longer, you know. People have gripes about basic services, which unfortunately have been cut significantly in the last decade because of the financial position of the council, and that includes things like picking up fly tip. You know, when you're going out and walking the dog and you go around 7 Acres Country Park or wherever you might be and you see fly tipping, it really irritates you and you think, actually, why is that being left there for so long? The council should be coming around to pick it up. So, you know, the Labour Party who runs the authority now is quite keen on investing in services like that. I think one of the other things, and we had a very successful campaign during the election, was on public transport connections. So Breightmet, my ward, doesn't have a railway station. We're not on the Metrolink line in Bolton. So if you don't drive, you rely heavily on bus services.
Very much so.
And the buses that ran the circular route round the Withens estate were proposed to be withdrawn altogether earlier this year. But we ran a successful petition and we got Transport for Greater Manchester to step in and fund those. So they still run now. And it's what opportunities are presented as part of Andy Burnham's plans to bring buses back under public control to improve those services and improve connectivity.
Andy Burnham, Mr. Popular we're talking about there, in Bolton. Anyway, let's have some music. Sean, a difficult question, I suppose, in some respects, but do you think we could do anything else, by me I mean the radio station and yourselves, to give people the confidence that all this work that's going on is going to deliver ultimately, maybe a few years away, is going to deliver benefits to Bolton?
Well, I certainly think there's a piece of work that can be done around marketing and selling the vision in a way that we haven't necessarily. Lots of people ask me on the doors in Breightmet, why are we building houses and apartments in the centre of town? We want shops and things like that. And I sympathise with that argument, but the reason, and a lot of towns are doing this, including successful places like Bury and, but even comparing ourselves to Manchester and Salford, are making it so that more people live in and around town centres, because then they spend their evenings and weekends spending their money in local shops and businesses and regenerating the economy. So we're trying to do a little bit of that in Bolton, but definitely selling the vision so that people think, oh, actually, I will buy an apartment or an house in the centre of Bolton, because even if I work in Manchester, the train runs so frequently, and in the other direction, you can go up to Rivington Pike and you're hit open countryside relatively quick.
I'll make the offer now. I'm willing to take part in that using my programme on this radio station, because I think it's that important. If we can't get people committed to the vision, then it doesn't matter how many houses you bring, they just won't do it and they won't latch onto it. So we've got to be selling, it might be 5 years down the road, but my belief as a radio man is we start to sell it now and get people on our side, and I don't think that's being done in Bolton at all. Well,
I'm sure the council would bite your hand off with any support. It's not all on the council to do this and sell this vision, and it will take partners, whether that's Bolton at Home or whatever else, associations and other agencies and organisations like yourselves,
the more the better,
to all pull together and sell this vision. And that's something that needs to be coordinated.
Well, I'm not seeing any of this in Bolton. We're all concentrating on, we've got bricklayers going, we got wagons, we got everything, but nobody seems to be able to say. The best one I heard was a councillor came in here and he said, Kevin, we saw what happened in Manchester. And now the opportunity for Bolton in terms of Manchester is that what property values have gone through the roof, whereas the original market for Manchester was young people in the 20s, late 20s, early 30s. The prices have gone too high for them now, so maybe we can tempt them to buy we got a great train service into Manchester if you work there. We could then draw people back in to reinvest in Bolton by buying homes here. That kind of had a ring to it for things, and I think it's that and other people ideas have that could push it forward. So tell Mick from me, if he wants to use my show, then we'll do it.
Yeah, well, I spent a brief spell living in the centre of Manchester before arriving here, and I'm 33 now, and the people in the apartment block that I lived in are in their 20s and stuff. But it wasn't sustainable to stay living in Manchester, and when people get a bit older and you might want to start a family, you do look to places like Bolton or Bury or Rochdale that are a bit further out. You can get a bit more for your money, you can get a bit of land or whatever, and you're not far from lovely open countryside, and it's a different kind of lifestyle. And I think there is a real opportunity for Bolton to say, actually, as those people that are in the 20s at the moment in the centre of Manchester and Salford get older, we could be the kind of family place that they then move to, and they will bring their disposable income, because they'll still have the same successful jobs that they have now, and they can live here and they can commute into Manchester if that's what they do. But when they come back, they can support vibrant high streets in places like Farnworth and West Orton and Horwich. And West Orton is an interesting one, because actually, I've been down there and there's places like independent local breweries and all that sort of stuff, and it's a nice place to do a bit of a bar crawl, and that's not just Wetherspoons and mainstream kind of places.
What's wrong with that? I think along those are good lines to follow, and I think the other one is, Yes, we have to sell it to people outside of Bolton, but we have to sell it to people in Bolton because some of the bus services are not what they should be. You know, when I ask people, if you live in Breightmet, can you catch a bus directly to Middlebrook? No.
No. And that's something that we can look at. You know, since we ran the campaign on the bus services in the election that I just won, I've had other people get in touch with me in other parts of the ward where they've said, well, we used to have a bus that ran down Garstang Avenue or wherever it may be, and we'd like that back on. And there is a real opportunity to do things like that when buses come back under public control in September. And you can look at making those connections between Middlebrook and Breightmet or wherever, or the hospital and Breightmet, or, you know, where the good jobs are and where the leisure stuff is.
I mean, the worst thing to do is for people to feel neglected, to feel cut off from all. So they get people like me coming on telling them, oh, good butlers, and they simply say, can't get there.
Yeah.
So the payback on doing some of these things is phenomenal.
Yeah.
In terms, I don't mean payback in terms of cash, but payback in people's respect for fact you've done what you said you would do.
I think that's it, you know. And when I came along and started running the election campaign in Breightmet, we have stock leaflets that are provided to us by the Labour Party, and they talk about how the NHS is wonderful, and it absolutely is, and how it's dreadful that there have been so many cuts to Bolton Council and other councils. And, you know, I agree with that as well. But people are looking for something more. They're looking for their local representatives to be active on the ground and work on issues that make a difference on their street. And the bus thing that we did in Breightmet is an example of that, because there is a bus that runs down Deepdale Road still as a result of the work that me as a Labour candidate at the time did. And there are other things that we need to do to demonstrate locally that we're not just an extension of the National Labour Party. We're active on the ground and we respond to things that are important to you.
Sean, thanks very much for coming in, and don't be a stranger. Thank you.
Thank you.